Emily Carter had always believed in the power of kindness. To the world, she was just a cashier at Green Valley Grocery, a small store nestled in a quiet neighborhood. But to the people who came in every day, she was much more than that. She was a familiar face, a comforting presence, and a reminder that even in the rush of life, there were still people who cared. Every morning, Emily arrived at the store early, making sure everything was in place before the first customers walked in. She greeted each person with a warm smile, her brown eyes filled with a kindness that felt rare in a world that often seemed indifferent. She remembered names, asked about families, and noticed the little things, like when Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who lived alone, hadn't come in for a few days, or when Mr. Reynolds, a single father, seemed more tired than usual. For Emily, this job wasn't just about scanning items and handing out receipts. It was about making people feel seen. When a mother came through the checkout line, exhausted from juggling groceries and a crying toddler, Emily would distract the child with a cheerful greeting and a playful wink, giving the mother a brief moment to breathe. When a regular customer looked particularly down, she would offer a kind word or a joke, hoping to bring even the smallest bit of light to their day. But behind her warm demeanor, Emily carried her own burdens. She had grown up in foster care, moving from one home to another, never staying long enough to feel like she truly belonged anywhere. The world had shown her its harsh side from an early age, teaching her that people could be indifferent, circumstances unfair, and life unpredictable. Yet, instead of letting it harden her, she had chosen to be kind. She had decided that if she could make even one person's day a little better, then all the struggles she had endured would not be in vain. Still, life was not easy. Despite working tirelessly, Emily struggled financially. Her paycheck barely covered rent, groceries, and other necessities. Some nights, she skipped meals just to make sure she had enough to last the week. But she never let anyone see that side of her. She refused to let her hardships define her, believing that her struggles did not give her an excuse to be unkind. To many, being a cashier might have seemed like an ordinary, unremarkable job. But to Emily, it was her way of making a difference, no matter how small. In a city full of people rushing through their lives, she wanted to be the person who reminded them that they mattered. And though she never expected anything in return, her simple acts of kindness would soon lead to something far greater than she had ever imagined. It was a rainy afternoon when Emily first noticed him. The glass door of Green Valley Grocery swung open, letting in a gust of cold air and the scent of rain-soaked pavement. A man hesitated at the entrance, his posture uncertain, as if debating whether he should step inside at all. He was dressed simply, an oversized gray hoodie pulled low over his forehead, the hood shielding most of his face. A baseball cap sat snugly on his head, further obscuring his features, and his faded jeans were slightly damp from the rain. He looked like any other customer, but something about him caught Emily's attention. Maybe it was the way he lingered at the doorway, as if unsure whether he belonged there. Or maybe it was the quiet tension in his posture, the way his shoulders were slightly hunched, as if weighed down by something unseen. Emily, ever warm and welcoming, offered him a smile. "Hi there. Welcome to Green Valley. Let me know if you need help finding anything." The man barely acknowledged her, offering only a small nod before slipping further into the aisles. He moved slowly, his eyes scanning the shelves, but his focus seemed distant. He wasn't browsing, he was stalling. Emily watched discreetly as he picked up a few simple items, a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a small pack of cookies. Nothing extravagant, just the basics. Yet, when he approached the checkout counter, there was an undeniable hesitancy in the way he placed the items on the counter. "That'll be $12.50, Emily said, her tone as gentle as always. The man reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled $10 bill and a few loose coins. He counted the change in his palm, his fingers trembling slightly. A shadow of frustration and embarrassment crossed his face as he realized he was short. I think I'll just put the cookies back," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily paused. She could hear the reluctance in his voice, the way it wavered just slightly. He wasn't just short on cash, he was struggling. She made a quick decision. With a soft smile, she pushed the bag of groceries toward him. "Don't worry about it," she said kindly. "It's on me today." The man's head snapped up, surprise flickering across his tired eyes. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Emily reassured him. "We all need a little pick-me-up sometimes." For a moment, he just stared at her, as if trying to understand why a stranger would do something so selfless. Slowly, his guarded expression softened. The tension in his shoulders eased, and for the first time, he allowed himself to smile, a small, grateful smile, but one that felt genuine. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with something unspoken. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Emily simply nodded, watching as he took the bag and turned to leave. She had no idea who he really was, no clue that this small act of kindness would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. But as she watched him step back out into the rain, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story than he let on. The man in the gray hoodie wasn't just another struggling customer. His name was Daniel Harper, and he was the CEO of Harper Enterprises, one of the largest retail chains in the country. Few people would have recognized him dressed like that. In the world of high finance and corporate meetings, Daniel Harper was known for his sharp suits, expensive watches, and polished speeches. He was a self-made billionaire, a man who had built his empire from nothing, starting with a single store and turning it into a nationwide business. But lately, none of it had felt fulfilling. Daniel had spent years focused on profits, expansion, and efficiency, working tirelessly to ensure his company's success. But somewhere along the way, he had lost touch with the heart of his business, the people. The employees who stocked the shelves, rang up purchases, and interacted with customers every single day. He had forgotten what their lives were like. He had once believed in making a difference, in building something that mattered, but lately, his world had become nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. And then, one day, reality struck him harder than ever. Reports of employee dissatisfaction had been piling up: low wages, long hours, managers who dismissed workers' concerns. At first, he had ignored it, assuming it was just part of running a big business. But then, something inside him had started to shift. Had he really become so disconnected from the very people who made his company run? That was when he made a decision. He would go undercover, visiting his own stores disguised as an average customer, to see for himself what was really happening. That was how he had ended up in Green Valley Grocery, standing at the checkout counter with shaking hands, short on cash, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: vulnerability. And then there was Emily. Her kindness had completely caught him off guard. She hadn't known who he was, hadn't expected anything in return. She had simply chosen to help a stranger because she could. As he walked back to his car, the bag of groceries in his hand, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Emily Carter. She was different. She had no idea that she had just impacted the life of a man who had the power to change hers in return. That night, Daniel Harper lay awake in his penthouse apartment, staring at the ceiling. The luxurious bedding, the sleek modern furniture, and the skyline view of the city, all the symbols of his success, felt strangely hollow. He had spent years building his empire, accumulating wealth, expanding his business, and ensuring Harper Enterprises remained at the top of the retail industry. But tonight, none of that mattered. His mind was back at Green Valley Grocery, replaying a moment so small yet so significant that it had shaken something deep within him. Emily Carter. She had been nothing more than a cashier, a young woman standing behind the counter of a modest grocery store. By all accounts, she was an ordinary worker in an industry he had long stopped thinking about in personal terms. And yet, the kindness she had shown him, so effortless, so genuine, had left a mark on him in a way that billions of dollars and corporate victories never had. He had expected to walk into that store as a nameless customer, just another face in the crowd. Instead, she had seen him. Not as the CEO of a multimillion-dollar company, not as a man who controlled thousands of jobs, but as a person. She had greeted him warmly, spoken to him kindly, and when he had come up short on money, she had stepped in without hesitation. Not out of pity. Not for recognition. Simply because she could. Daniel sighed and ran a hand through his hair, frustration and regret settling deep in his chest. How long had it been since he had thought that way? Since he had acted not for profit, not for growth, but simply for the sake of doing something good? He used to believe in that. Once upon a time, Harper Enterprises had been about more than just money. He had started with one small store, just like Green Valley Grocery. Back then, he had known every employee by name. He had worked the aisles himself, stocked shelves, and spoken to customers as if they were family. He had believed in treating people well, in building something meaningful, something that helped both his customers and his workers. But somewhere along the way, he had lost sight of that. He had become consumed by numbers, profit margins, expansion plans, shareholder expectations. His employees had turned into statistics, their wages just another expense on a balance sheet. He had convinced himself that cutting costs and increasing efficiency were necessary sacrifices. But tonight, all he could think about was the look in Emily's eyes. The way she had smiled at him, reassuring and warm, as if his struggle, his brief moment of discomfort, mattered to her. The way she had given without expecting anything in return. And the way he had felt in response. A lump formed in his throat as he realized something painful. Emily Carter, a grocery store cashier, was more in touch with the values he had once built his company on than he was. And that needed to change. Pushing back the covers, Daniel sat up. Sleep was impossible, not with his thoughts running wild. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand, scrolling through his contacts until he found the number of his assistant. His finger hovered over the screen. He could fix this. He still had power, more than enough to make a difference. And it would start with Emily. Not because she had helped him, but because she had reminded him of who he used to be. In a world that often seemed rushed, where people moved past each other without a second glance, Emily Carter stood out, not because she sought attention, but because of the quiet kindness she carried with her every day. She had never seen herself as extraordinary. To Emily, kindness wasn't something grand or complicated, it was in the little things, remembering a customer's name, asking about their sick mother, or simply offering a warm smile to someone who looked like they needed it. It was a belief she had carried all her life, despite the hardships she had faced. So when a man in a worn hoodie had come to her register, fumbling with his change, she hadn't hesitated. She had seen the hesitation in his eyes, the embarrassment tightening his jaw as he realized he didn't have enough money. She had heard the defeated whisper in his voice when he said he would put something back. And in that moment, she had done what felt right. Asterisk, don't worry about it, it's on me today. Asterisk. She had smiled, her voice light, casual, as if it were nothing. Because to her, it really wasn't. It was a small thing, a simple gesture, a way to make someone's day a little better. She hadn't expected anything in return. But what she didn't know was that the man she had helped wasn't just any customer. Daniel Harper had walked into that store expecting nothing more than an ordinary visit. He had wanted to see his business from the ground level, to observe without being noticed. What he had not expected was to be seen, not as a wealthy CEO, not as a man of influence, but as just another person in need of a little kindness. And Emily, without knowing his name, without knowing his wealth or power, had given it to him freely. That single moment stuck with him. It was such a small thing. A pack of cookies, a few dollars, a simple act of generosity. And yet, it had changed something in him. That night, as he lay awake in his penthouse, surrounded by luxury, it wasn't the board meetings or financial reports running through his mind. It was the image of Emily, the way she had smiled, the way she had helped without hesitation. She had reminded him of something he had long forgotten, the power of simple kindness. And because of that, Daniel Harper knew he could no longer be the same man he was before. Emily Carter had always believed that hard work and dedication would eventually lead to something better. It was how she had lived her entire life, giving her all, even when no one was watching, even when the effort seemed to go unnoticed. For 3 years, she had worked tirelessly at Green Valley Grocery, never complaining, never slacking off. She wasn't just a cashier, she was the heart of the store. She greeted customers with warmth, remembered their names and stories, and always made sure that every person who walked through the doors left feeling a little lighter. She covered extra shifts when her coworkers needed time off. She stayed late when the store was understaffed. She never asked for anything in return, until now. Because no matter how hard she worked, no matter how much effort she put in, her paycheck never seemed to stretch far enough. It had taken weeks for Emily to build up the courage to ask for a raise. She had rehearsed the conversation in her head over and over again, imagining all the ways it could go. She had even stayed late the night before, running the numbers again and again, trying to convince herself that maybe she could hold off a little longer. But the truth was undeniable, she couldn't. Rent had gone up. Groceries were more expensive than ever. The bills kept coming, and her salary remained the same. So, on a quiet evening, after the last of the customers had left and the store had settled into an exhausted stillness, Emily took a deep breath and walked toward the manager's office. Her hands were clammy, her heart hammering against her ribs. She hated asking for things. She had spent her entire life figuring things out on her own, pushing through struggles without leaning on anyone. But this wasn't about luxury, it was about survival. She knocked lightly on the door. Come in. Mr. Reynolds, the store manager, looked up from his computer screen as she stepped inside. He was a man in his late 50s, with thinning hair and deep lines on his face that made him look perpetually exhausted. He had worked in retail for decades, and it showed. Emily took another deep breath, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. Mr. Reynolds, I was wondering if we could talk for a moment, she began, clasping her hands in front of her to keep them from shaking. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. What's on your mind, Emily? She hesitated for only a second before pushing forward. I wanted to discuss the possibility of a raise. I've been with the store for 3 years now, and I've always given my best. I take on extra shifts, I help train new employees, and I truly love what I do here. But, she paused, struggling to find the right words. It's becoming really difficult to make ends meet. I work full-time, but it's just not enough to cover my expenses anymore. Mr. Reynolds let out a long, slow sigh. That wasn't a good sign. He ran a hand down his face before looking at her with an expression that was neither surprised nor apologetic, just tired. Emily, he said, his voice measured, I understand where you're coming from. I really do. You're one of our best employees, and I know how hard you work. But right now, the company just isn't in a position to increase wages. Corporate has been cutting costs across the board, and there's nothing I can do about it. Emily felt her stomach sink. She had expected this answer, but somehow, hearing it still made her chest tighten. But, isn't there anything that can be done? She asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading. I know the company has been expanding, opening new locations. How is it that there's money for that, but not enough to pay the people who are keeping these stores running? Mr. Reynolds exhaled again, shaking his head. It's not that simple, he said. Decisions like that are made way above my level. If I had the power, I'd give you and everyone else a raise, but my hands are tied. The budget is what it is. And honestly, if I push too hard, I might lose my job. And then what? Emily stared at him for a long moment. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that this wasn't fair, that people like her, people who gave everything to their jobs, deserved better. But she could see it in his eyes. He wasn't lying. He was just another cog in the machine, just as trapped as she was. She nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. I understand, she said quietly. And in a way, she did. This wasn't about whether she deserved a raise. She knew she did. This was about a system that had decided long ago that workers like her were replaceable. That no matter how hard she worked, no matter how much she cared, she would always be seen as just another employee. As she walked back to her register, she forced herself to smile when the next customer approached. It was the same routine she had done 1,000 times before. But this time, something felt different. The warmth she had always carried, the quiet belief that kindness and dedication would be enough, had been replaced by something else. A quiet, bitter truth. No matter how much she gave, it would never be enough. The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Green Valley Grocery, casting a muted rhythm over the quiet store. It was one of those dreary afternoons when people hurry to their destinations, heads bowed against the drizzle, too preoccupied to linger. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed softly, illuminating the neat rows of stocked shelves, and the faint scent of fresh produce mingled with the scent of rain-soaked pavement outside. Emily Carter sat behind the checkout counter, absent-mindedly flipping through a magazine. Though she tried to focus on the glossy pages, her mind wandered, weighed down by the usual worries. Rent was due soon, bills were piling up, and her paycheck, as always, stretched thin. Still, she forced herself to smile whenever a customer approached, offering warm greetings, genuine even in her exhaustion. Then, the bell above the entrance chimed. Emily glanced up, expecting to see a busy mother grabbing last-minute groceries, or an elderly man picking up his usual carton of milk. But instead, a man stepped in, moving with a quiet hesitation that immediately caught her attention. He was dressed simply, faded jeans, a gray hoodie pulled low over his face, a baseball cap casting a shadow over his eyes. Something about his posture seemed uncertain, as if he wasn't sure he belonged there. For a moment, he lingered by the door, his gaze sweeping the store like someone debating whether to enter at all. Emily, ever observant, took in the subtle signs, the slight stiffness in his shoulders, the way his fingers twitched at his sides as if he were anxious about something. Yet, instead of suspicion, she only felt curiosity. She offered him a bright, reassuring smile. Hi there. Welcome to Green Valley. Let me know if you need any help. The man barely nodded in response. His eyes flickered toward her for a brief second before he turned away, slipping further into the aisles. Emily watched as he moved, his steps slow, deliberate. He didn't walk with the purposeful stride of someone who knew exactly what they needed. Instead, he drifted from shelf to shelf, picking up items only to put them back, as if debating each purchase carefully. There was something almost lost about him. After a few minutes, he finally approached the counter, placing a small selection of items onto the conveyor belt, a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a small pack of cookies. The combination was simple, almost too simple, and Emily couldn't help but wonder if this was all he could afford. As she scanned the items, she noticed his hands trembling slightly. "That'll be $12.50, she said gently, keeping her tone light and friendly. The man fumbled with his wallet, his fingers clumsy as he pulled out a crumpled $10 bill and some loose change. Emily could see the exact moment realization dawned on him, his breath hitched slightly, his lips pressing into a thin line. His shoulders tensed as he looked at the total again, comparing it to the money in his palm. He hesitated, swallowing hard before murmuring, I think I'll just put the cookies back. His voice was barely above a whisper, tinged with quiet embarrassment. Emily felt a pang in her chest. She had seen this before, the look of someone trying to stretch every dollar, calculating each item carefully, only to realize they had miscalculated. And the cookies, they weren't a necessity like the bread and milk. They were a small comfort, a little treat. Something extra that he had allowed himself, only to realize he couldn't afford it. Without thinking twice, she shook her head and smiled. Don't worry about it. It's on me today. The man's head snapped up, eyes widening in surprise. Are you sure? Absolutely, she said with an easy nod, already scanning the cookies and bagging them up. We all need a little pick-me-up sometimes. For the first time, the man really looked at her. His guarded expression softened just a bit, and then, just for a moment, his lips curled into a small, almost disbelieving smile. It was fleeting, hesitant, but genuine. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice carrying an emotion Emily couldn't quite place. Asterisk, "You have no idea how much this means to me." Asterisk. She simply handed him the bag, her own heart warmed by the moment. Asterisk, "Take care, okay?" Asterisk. As the man turned to leave, she watched him step back out into the rain, his posture a little lighter than when he'd arrived. A quiet sense of fulfillment settled over her. She didn't know his story, didn't know what burdens he carried. But she had learned long ago that kindness, no matter how small, could sometimes make all the difference. What she didn't know, however, was that this man, the quiet stranger in the gray hoodie, wasn't just any customer. And their brief encounter would change both of their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. The day had started like any other at Green Valley Grocery. The rhythmic beeping of cash registers, the occasional chatter of customers, and the hum of fluorescent lights filled the store. Employees moved about their usual tasks, restocking shelves, assisting shoppers, and scanning items at the checkout. But there was something different in the air that afternoon, a subtle tension that everyone seemed to feel but couldn't quite place. The employees whispered among themselves, their gazes darting toward the entrance every few minutes. It was as if they were anticipating something big. Emily Carter, as always, was at her post behind the register, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she scanned items and greeted customers with a warm smile. However, beneath her calm exterior, an uneasy feeling had settled in her stomach. She couldn't shake the strange energy that hung in the air. Then, the automatic doors slid open. The moment the tall figure stepped into the store, the entire atmosphere shifted. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The rustling of shopping bags ceased. Even the air itself seemed to still as every pair of eyes turned toward the man now standing just beyond the entrance. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Gone was the simple gray hoodie. Gone was the worn baseball cap that had once shielded his face. Instead, Daniel Harper stood before them in a sharp, perfectly tailored navy blue suit. His posture was upright, exuding quiet authority. His gaze, steady and composed, swept across the store as if memorizing every face before him. Murmurs erupted among the employees. "That's Daniel Harper. Asterisk, the CEO? Here? In person? Asterisk. Asterisk, why is he here? What's happening? Asterisk." Emily could hardly believe it. The kind yet mysterious man she had spoken to so many times over the past few weeks, the man who had seemed so ordinary, so unassuming, was none other than the CEO of Harper Enterprises. The realization sent a shockwave through her system, her mind struggling to process what it meant. Her pulse quickened as he began walking forward, each step measured and deliberate. Then, to her astonishment, his gaze landed directly on her. A lump formed in her throat. Why was he looking at her? Daniel stopped a few feet away, standing tall in the center of the store. He took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and then spoke. Asterisk, "I owe you all an apology." Asterisk. His voice, steady yet tinged with something deeply sincere, carried through the store. The employees exchanged glances, confusion flickering across their faces. "For too long," he continued, Asterisk, "I have been focused on numbers, on growth, on expansion, on cutting costs, without truly understanding what was happening in my own stores. Without seeing the people who make this company what it is." Asterisk. A heavy silence filled the room. Some employees listened warily, others with quiet curiosity. Daniel's gaze softened as he looked at Emily. Asterisk, "That changed when I met Emily." Asterisk. Her eyes widened. "Her?" Daniel continued, his voice laced with emotion. Asterisk, "She didn't know who I was. She had no reason to go out of her way for me. But she did. When I was short on money at the register, she didn't hesitate, she covered the difference without a second thought. It wasn't about the money. It was about kindness. About treating someone with dignity, even when no one was watching." Asterisk. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had done what she always did, helping where she could, offering a little warmth to those who seemed to need it. She never imagined that such a simple act would have led to this. Daniel turned back to the employees. His expression grew more serious. That small act made me realize something I had forgotten. This company isn't just about profits. It's about people. And I have failed to put people first. A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. Some employees shifted, as if absorbing the weight of his words. Others simply stared, unsure of what was to come next. Daniel inhaled deeply, then spoke with quiet determination. That changes today. Silence. Then. Starting now, Harper Enterprises is implementing a new policy. All employees will receive higher wages, better benefits, and increased opportunities for career growth. No longer will the people who work hard every day be overlooked or undervalued. You deserve more, and I am committed to making that happen. Gasps filled the room. A manager's jaw nearly dropped. A cashier at the far end of the store clapped a hand over her mouth in shock. One of the younger stock boys let out an incredulous "No way." Emily felt her chest tighten. It wasn't just words. She could hear it in his voice, he meant it. This wasn't some scripted corporate speech. This was real. The employees, so many of whom had struggled, who had felt unseen for years, now stood wide-eyed, blinking in disbelief. Then, like a dam breaking, excitement surged through the store. Employees whispered excitedly to one another, their stunned expressions giving way to cautious hope. Daniel wasn't finished. He turned back to Emily, his expression warm but filled with something deeper, respect. And Emily, he hesitated, as if carefully choosing his words. I know about your dream. Your love for baking. If you're willing, I'd like to offer you a position at our corporate office, where you can develop your skills, train under some of the best, and one day, open your own bakery, fully backed by Harper Enterprises. Emily's breath hitched. She could barely process what he had just said. My own bakery, the words rang in her ears, surreal and impossible. For years, it had been nothing more than a distant dream, one she had never truly believed would happen. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked at Daniel, searching his face for any sign that this was some kind of elaborate joke. But all she saw was sincerity. Her vision blurred as tears welled in her eyes. She swallowed the lump in her throat, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. Daniel's smile was gentle. Say yes. A tear slipped down her cheek. 1,000 thoughts swirled in her mind, but in the end, the answer was easy. Yes. Yes, I'd love that. A genuine smile broke across Daniel's face. Good. You deserve it. The store erupted into cheers. Some employees clapped, others wiped their eyes. Even customers, who had been watching the entire event unfold, joined in the applause. Emily stood amidst it all, overwhelmed but filled with something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Her simple act of kindness had sparked something much bigger than she had ever imagined. Not only had it changed her life, but it had changed the lives of so many others. And as Daniel looked around the store, seeing the joy, the disbelief, the gratitude, he realized something, too. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly fulfilled. Not because of numbers. Not because of profits. But because he had made a difference. And it all started with a cashier who cared. Emily Carter stood frozen behind the checkout counter, her heart hammering in her chest. The store, usually filled with the casual chatter of customers and the beeping of the register, had fallen eerily silent. Every pair of eyes was locked on the tall man in the expensive suit standing in front of her, the man she had come to know as a quiet, humble customer, always dressed in a gray hoodie and baseball cap. But now, that disguise was gone. And in its place stood Daniel Harper, the billionaire CEO of Harper Enterprises, one of the largest retail chains in the country. Her breath caught in her throat. She had spent weeks chatting with him, never once suspecting who he really was. He had asked about her day, listened to her stories, even shared a few quiet smiles. And now, he was standing here, looking at her with something she couldn't quite place: admiration? Gratitude? Emily, Daniel's voice was steady, yet filled with emotion. I need you to know that your kindness changed something in me. You reminded me of the kind of leader I wanted to be, the kind of person I used to be. And I want to do something in return. Emily blinked, her fingers gripping the counter to steady herself. The room felt too small, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. What do you mean? She asked hesitantly. Daniel smiled, the warmth in his expression cutting through the tension. I know about your dream, he continued. You told me once that you love baking, that you've always wanted to open your own bakery someday. And I believe in that dream. Emily's breath hitched. He remembered. She had only mentioned it once, in passing, when he had asked what she would do if she could do anything in the world. She had laughed at the time, brushing it off as nothing more than a silly fantasy. But now, here he was, speaking those words back to her as if they truly meant something. If you're willing, Daniel went on, I'd like to offer you a position at our corporate office, where you can train, develop your skills, and, when you're ready, open your own bakery, fully supported by Harper Enterprises. Emily's vision blurred. Her own bakery. The words echoed in her mind, too big, too impossible to grasp. For years, it had been nothing more than a distant hope, something she dreamed about late at night when she was too exhausted to sleep. She had spent countless evenings scribbling recipes in an old notebook, testing flavors in her tiny apartment, wishing for a future that always seemed just out of reach. And yet, here it was. Offered to her like a gift she never dared to ask for. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She tried, swallowing against the tightness in her throat. I don't know what to say. Daniel's eyes softened. Say yes. The room around her seemed to fade. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat, the rush of emotions crashing over her. Fear. Disbelief. Hope. Real, tangible hope. For so long, she had convinced herself that people like her, people who had grown up in foster care, who had struggled just to get by, didn't get opportunities like this. But Daniel Harper was standing in front of her, telling her that she could. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she exhaled a shaky breath. Yes, she whispered. The store erupted into cheers. Employees clapped, some wiping their own eyes. Even customers who had been silent spectators joined in the applause. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. Daniel chuckled softly. You've already changed my life, Emily. This is just my way of saying thank you. She looked at him through her tears, unable to believe this was real. For so long, she had felt like just a cashier in a small grocery store. But today, she had been reminded of something far greater. She was someone who mattered. Someone whose kindness had set off a ripple effect that would change not just her life, but the lives of so many others. And for the first time in a long time, Emily Carter truly believed she was stepping into the future she was always meant to have. Kindness is often underestimated. It is something we do without expecting anything in return, a quiet act of goodwill that can brighten someone's day but is easily forgotten. But sometimes, kindness is more powerful than we realize. It can set off a chain reaction, leading to changes far greater than we could ever imagine. For Emily Carter, kindness was a way of life. She wasn't just a cashier at Green Valley Grocery, she was a source of warmth and familiarity for every customer who walked through the doors. She made it a point to remember their names, ask about their families, and offer words of encouragement when she saw someone struggling. One rainy afternoon, her kindness led her to an encounter that would change everything. A man walked into the store, dressed in a gray hoodie and jeans, his baseball cap pulled low over his face. He hesitated at the entrance, his posture stiff, as if unsure whether he should step inside. Emily noticed him right away. There was something about him, something in the way he carried himself, that caught her attention. Still, she greeted him with the same warmth she gave everyone. Hi there, welcome to Green Valley Grocery. Let me know if you need any help. The man nodded slightly, murmured a quiet thank you, and made his way through the aisles. Emily watched as he moved slowly, picking up a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a small pack of cookies. Something about him seemed hesitant, almost cautious, as if he were debating whether he could afford what he had chosen. When he finally reached the checkout counter, Emily noticed that his hands were trembling slightly as he pulled out his wallet. He fumbled with the crumpled bills inside, counting them carefully before realizing he didn't have enough. I think I'll just put the cookies back, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. There was a flicker of embarrassment in his eyes, a quiet resignation that told Emily this wasn't the first time he had to make such a decision. She saw it too often, the look of someone struggling, someone doing their best to get by but falling just a little short. For Emily, the decision was instant. Don't worry about it, she said with a gentle smile. It's on me today. The man's eyes widened. Are you sure? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Absolutely, she nodded. We all need a little pick-me-up sometimes. For the first time, the man smiled. It was small, hesitant, but genuine. Thank you, he said softly, the weight of his gratitude heavy in his tone. You have no idea how much this means to me. Emily simply handed him his bag, her heart swelling with quiet joy. She didn't do it for recognition. She didn't expect anything in return. She only wanted to help, to remind someone that they mattered. What she didn't know was that this man was not just any customer. He was Daniel Harper, the billionaire CEO of Harper Enterprises, the massive retail chain that owned grocery stores across the country. A man who had built an empire but had long since lost touch with the people who worked in his stores. That single moment of kindness shook something deep inside him. For years, Daniel had been chasing success, expanding his business, increasing profits, ensuring his company's financial growth. But in doing so, he had distanced himself from the heart of it all, the employees who worked day and night to keep the stores running. Lately, he had felt an emptiness creeping into his life. He had everything, money, power, success, but he felt disconnected from the very people who made his company possible. Determined to understand what was really happening in his stores, he decided to go undercover as an ordinary customer. And then, he met Emily. Her kindness struck him in a way he hadn't expected. She hadn't known who he was, hadn't treated him any differently than she would any other struggling customer. And yet, in that small act, paying for a pack of cookies, she had reminded him of something he had long forgotten, the power of human connection. Over the next few weeks, Daniel found himself returning to Green Valley Grocery. He spoke with Emily more, learning about her dreams, her struggles, her unwavering kindness despite the hardships she had faced. He listened when she spoke about her love for baking, the quiet hope in her voice when she mentioned one day opening her own bakery. And then, one day, he overheard her asking her manager for a raise. Emily had been struggling to make ends meet, and yet, when she asked for a small increase in her wages, she was brushed off. Her manager told her that the company couldn't afford to pay her more, despite the fact that Daniel knew the truth. That night, Daniel lay awake, guilt gnawing at him. He had spent years making business decisions based on numbers, never stopping to think about how those decisions affected people like Emily, people who worked tirelessly but were never truly rewarded for their efforts. It was time for a change. A few days later, Daniel walked back into Green Valley Grocery, but this time, he wasn't in disguise. He entered wearing a sharp suit, his presence commanding attention. Employees whispered, customers turned to stare. Emily looked up from the checkout counter, her eyes widening in shock. You're Daniel Harper, she stammered. Daniel smiled gently. Asterisk, yes, I am. And I owe you an apology. Asterisk. As the store fell into stunned silence, Daniel explained who he really was, why he had been coming back, and how Emily's kindness had changed him. He spoke about the importance of truly valuing employees, of making sure they were not just seen as workers but as people. And then, he made a promise. Wages would increase across his entire company. Employees would receive better benefits, more opportunities for growth, and the recognition they deserved. And as for Emily? I know about your dream, Daniel said, looking at her with sincerity. Asterisk, if you're willing, I want to help you make it happen. I'd like to offer you a position at our corporate office, where you can develop your skills and, one day, open your own bakery, with full support from Harper Enterprises. Asterisk. Emily's hands trembled. Her heart pounded in her chest. This wasn't just kindness, this was a life-changing opportunity. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, asterisk, yes. Asterisk. Cheers erupted throughout the store. Employees clapped, customers beamed, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt something she had never truly let herself believe in, hope. Emily had never expected anything in return for her small act of generosity. But in the end, that single moment of kindness had not only changed her life, it had changed Daniel's, and the lives of thousands of employees across the company. Kindness, no matter how small, has the power to create ripples that reach further than we can ever imagine. And sometimes, one simple act of goodness is enough to change the world.